Do you know what made the 1950s an unforgettable era in music history? The 50s were a transformative time, a decade that reshaped the music scene and left an indelible imprint on future generations. This was a time of new beginnings, a time when the world was recovering from the ravages of war and music became a balm for the soul. New genres emerged, each with its own unique sound and style. Rock and roll burst onto the scene, captivating the youth with its rebellious spirit. Pop music in its golden age was a delightful blend of melodies that were easy on the ears and hard to forget. Jazz, the sound of freedom, resonated with the struggles and triumphs of the era. Influence from socio-political events was evident, as artists used their music to comment on the world around them. The 1950s was not just an era of change, but a revolution in music that still echoes today. The 1950s were a time of seismic musical shifts, and none was greater than the birth of rock and roll. It was a genre that took the world by storm, shaking up the status quo and creating a musical revolution. It was daring, it was bold, and it was unlike anything that had been heard before. Imagine a time when the airwaves were dominated by crooners and swing bands. Then suddenly, there came a new sound, raw, energetic, and utterly captivating. This was the birth of rock and roll, a genre born out of a fusion of rhythm and blues, country music, and gospel. It was a sound that was uniquely American, yet it resonated with young people all over the world. At the forefront of this new movement were iconic figures like Elvis Presley and Chuck Berry. Elvis, with his gyrating hips and soulful voice, was dubbed the King of Rock and Roll. He took the genre mainstream, becoming a global sensation and a symbol of youthful rebellion. Then there was Chuck Berry, with his electrifying guitar riffs and charismatic stage presence. Berry's music was a potent blend of rhythm and blues and country, and his songs became anthems for a generation. But rock and roll was more than just music. It was a cultural phenomenon that broke racial barriers and changed the music industry. It was a genre that was born in the African American community, and it crossed over to a mainstream audience, helping to break down racial segregation in the music industry. It was a genre that gave voice to the feelings and aspirations of a generation, and it changed the way music was made and consumed. Rock and roll was a game changer. It redefined what was possible in music, and it opened the door for a multitude of other genres. It was a genre that dared to be different, that challenged conventions, and that ultimately changed the world. And thus, rock and roll, with its rebellious spirit, set the tone for the rest of the decade. While rock and roll was shaking things up, another genre was also making its mark: pop music. This was a time when we saw the rise of a genre that would soon become a staple in the music industry and a soundtrack to many lives. Pop music in its infancy was a melting pot of various musical styles, blending elements of jazz, blues, and country with traditional orchestral themes. Enter the stage, Frank Sinatra, a man who embodied the essence of pop music. With his smooth, velvety voice and unrivaled charisma, he captured the hearts of millions. Sinatra's music was a reflection of life itself, filled with tales of love, heartbreak, and everything in between. His timeless classics like My Way and Fly Me to the Moon are still cherished today, a testament to the enduring power of pop music. Likewise, Nat King Cole, with his velvety voice and effortless charm, became a beacon of pop music. His hits like Unforgettable and When I Fall in Love were more than just songs. They were stories, filled with raw emotion and depth. Cole's music touched people's hearts, making them feel understood and less alone in their experiences. But pop music was more than just the voices of Sinatra and Cole. It was a genre that gave rise to many talented artists, each bringing their unique touch to the music. From the upbeat tunes of Doris Day to the soulful ballads of Ella Fitzgerald, pop music became a colorful tapestry of diverse sounds and stories. This was the age when pop music became a tool for storytelling, a medium through which artists could express their emotions and experiences. It was a genre that resonated with people, mirroring their joys, their sorrows, their hopes, and their dreams. Pop music, with its catchy melodies and heartfelt lyrics, became the soundtrack of an era. It was music that connected people, transcending boundaries of age, race, and culture. It was and still is a genre that speaks to the heart, reminding us of our shared human experiences. It was indeed the golden age of pop. Amidst the rise of pop and rock and roll, there was a genre that embodied the spirit of freedom: jazz. In the 1950s, jazz was more than just a genre of music. It was a form of expression, a voice echoing through the halls of time, carrying with it the hopes and dreams of a generation yearning for change. In the heart of this jazz era, two figures stood tall, their music reverberating through the annals of history: Miles Davis and Ella Fitzgerald. Miles Davis, an innovative trumpeter, made his mark with The Birth of the Cool, an album that altered the sound of jazz itself. Davis's music was steeped in emotion, each note a testament to his unique perspective on life. His sound was a blend of raw emotion and technical prowess, a fusion that breathed life into the world of jazz. Ella Fitzgerald, often known as the Queen of Jazz, possessed a voice that was nothing short of enchanting. With her flawless intonation and impressive range, Fitzgerald was a force to be reckoned with. She used her music not just to entertain, but to communicate, each song a story waiting to be told. But jazz was more than just beautiful music. It was a beacon of social change, a voice for racial equality. Jazz musicians, many of whom were African American, used their music to challenge societal norms and advocate for civil rights. They played their music with a passion that transcended the boundaries of race and class, their tunes a testament to their struggle for equality. Jazz was a genre that thrived on improvisation, a quality that lent it an air of unpredictability and excitement. This improvisational aspect of jazz was a reflection of the freedom it represented: the freedom to express oneself, to innovate, to challenge the status quo. Jazz, with its improvisation and expressiveness, became a symbol of freedom and resistance. This music, born out of a desire for change, left an indelible mark on the world, its echoes still heard in the music of today. It was, and continues to be, the sound of freedom. As the decade came to a close, the music of the 1950s left an indelible mark on history. The 1950s were a time of great change and innovation in music, and the impact of that era can still be felt today. The genres that emerged and the artists who rose to prominence during this time would go on to shape the sound of future generations in profound ways. Rock and roll, with its raw energy and rebellious spirit, paved the way for subsequent movements like punk and grunge. Artists such as Elvis Presley and Chuck Berry, who became household names in the 1950s, laid the groundwork for stars like the Beatles and the Rolling Stones, who would take the world by storm in the 1960s. Pop music, too, experienced a golden age in the 1950s, with artists such as Frank Sinatra and Doris Day reaching unprecedented levels of fame. Their smooth, polished sound would influence later pop icons like the Beach Boys and the Supremes, while their widespread popularity paved the way for the dominance of pop music in the charts that continues to this day. And let's not forget jazz, the sound of freedom, which found its voice in the 1950s through artists like Miles Davis and Ella Fitzgerald. Their innovative approaches to harmony, rhythm, and improvisation would leave a lasting legacy, influencing later genres such as funk, soul, and even hip-hop. In essence, the music of the 1950s served as a launching pad, a fertile ground from which countless musical movements would grow. It was a decade that dared to push boundaries, to experiment, to innovate, and in doing so, it set the stage for the rich diversity of music that we enjoy today. Beyond its influence on music, the 1950s left a cultural imprint that's impossible to ignore. The decade's music provided the soundtrack to a society in flux, reflecting the hopes, fears, and dreams of a generation. The music of the 1950s, with its groundbreaking genres and iconic figures, forever changed the landscape of music. From the birth of rock and roll to the golden age of pop and the sound of freedom in jazz, the 1950s was truly an unforgettable era in music history. This remarkable decade gave us a plethora of musical styles that shaped the cultural landscapes of societies worldwide. It was an era that saw the emergence of iconic artists who, through their music, created a lasting impact that still resonates today. The rock and roll revolution, the enchanting melodies of pop music, and the soul-stirring rhythms of jazz all originated from this era, each genre leaving its unique imprint on the world. These musical forms not only entertained us, but also gave us a platform to express and understand the complexities of our lives. The 1950s music, with its powerful influence, will forever remain a testament to the transformative power of art and creativity. Thank you for joining us on this musical journey. Don't forget to like this video and subscribe to Time Capsule Tales for more interesting stories. Until next time, keep the music playing.